Once upon a time, there lived a sad couple who lived in a miserable marriage. Their names were Kunlay and Simi, and they were childhood sweethearts who got married at the age of 18. Simi stood by Kunle's side despite all the struggles and challenges that they faced. At a point, Kunle lost his job, and for 5 years, they lived from hand to mouth. Simi became the breadwinner of the family, waking up so early to sell food at the roadside. She also took on small cleaning jobs and did whatever it took to put food on the table. She did all this despite being the daughter of a very wealthy man. Simi had gone against her father's wishes to marry Kunle. She believed so much in their love, forfeiting all her inheritance just to be with him, and Kunle promised to never let her down. She stood by his side through every storm, silently enduring as her only cousin Sheyi inherited everything that was rightfully meant for her. Simi did not mind as long as she had Kunle in her corner. They toiled and struggled until Kunle finally found his feet again. He started a small business which began to grow. Slowly at first, then suddenly, money started to pour in. Contracts, clients, influence. Kunle became a man of status. People looked at him with admiration, but something in him changed. With the wealth came arrogance. With success came pride. And then came another woman. Her name was Tolani, a woman half his age, with long lashes, smooth skin, and a mouth that knew just the right lies to tell. Tolani flattered Kunle. She made him feel young again, important, desired, and before long Kunle began to spend time with her. Simi noticed, but she said nothing at first. She watched, waited, hoping it was just a phase, but the late night calls, the suspicious receipts, and the faint scent of unfamiliar perfume, all signs pointed to betrayal. Then one day, she found them together. Not just rumors, not just suspicion. She walked into a hotel lobby to pick up a parcel from a friend, and there they were, Kunle and Tolani, arms locked, laughing like teenagers in love. Something in Simi broke that day. 20 years of loyalty, 20 years of sacrifice, of standing by him, even when she had every reason to walk away. But Simi did not cause a scene. She turned around, walked back to her car, and drove home. For all these years, Simi had trusted her husband blindly. She felt like a fool, believing all his ridiculous stories whenever he returned home late or went on unplanned business trips. She had trusted Kunle, not knowing that he was out there with another woman. Simi grabbed her laptop and for the first time in years, logged into their joint account to scrutinize her husband's spending. There she saw it, repeated transactions to a certain account, bearing the name Tolani George. The first payment she came across was 10 million naira for shopping, then another huge payment of 50 million naira for a car. Simi could not contain her rage. She did more digging to know who this woman was and realized that she worked in her husband's company. Simi was so livid. The more she replayed the scene at the hotel, the more furious she became. Simi could remember how long she begged her husband to change her car, but her husband always had one excuse or the other. Let's wait till next summer, Simi. You know business is unpredictable. You don't need a new car. That one still moves, doesn't it? He said these things to Simi, knowing how understanding she was. Meanwhile, he was out there lavishing millions on his mistress, a woman who was obviously with him because of his money, a woman who he now gave his maximum attention, whilst leaving her all alone in the house, claiming to be in one meeting or the other. Simi's hands trembled as she stared at the screen of her laptop, her vision blurred with tears, not of pain, but of betrayal so deep that it sliced through her soul like a hot blade. She had given up everything for Kunle, her youth, her family, her inheritance, and this was how Kunle decided to reward her. Simi was so heartbroken. She could not imagine leaving her marriage for a woman who had no idea how much she had sacrificed for her marriage. Everything Kunle had, was because of her sweat and suffering. Simi, in that moment, remembered how she gave Kunle all her savings to start his business. She even went further to introduce Kunle to one of her father's friends, who gave Kunle his first contract. She had risked it all for love, for Kunle, for the dream that they had built together with their sweat and suffering. And now, a stranger with painted nails and a pretty face had walked in and begun to reap where she had not sown. Simi closed the laptop gently. Her face, once wet with tears, now tightened with resolve. Something in her had awakened, something cold and calculating. Simi decided not to scream. She wouldn't throw things or beg for his attention. No, that was beneath her now. She would remind Kunle who she truly was, the woman who bettered his empire and the one who could burn it to the ground without flinching. Kunle returned home hours later and met Simi sitting on the couch with a smile on her face. "You must be tired, my darling," she said to her husband Kunle, who yawned and nodded, grumbling about how his contractors kept him late at the office because of their incompetence. Simi smiled and walked towards him. "Relax, my darling, whilst I bring your food," she said as she catwalked to the kitchen to bring his food. Simi served him his favorite meal, and Kunle dug into the meal like a hungry dog. She sat by his side, smiling as she watched him dig into his food. Simi was so broken, but she chose silence over chaos. She sat in quiet disbelief, struggling to understand how the man she had given her everything, and also built from the ground up, would turn around to stab her in the back. She decided to give him one more chance by asking for some money to change her car, and Kunle, without hesitation, yelled angrily at her, asking why she was so materialistic. That was the final straw. Simi did not flinch as Kunle yelled, didn't blink as he called her names, didn't shed a single tear. She just stared at him, this man she had sacrificed her life for, who now looked at her as though she were a beggar. She had given him everything, her wealth, her loyalty, her name, and now all he had to offer her in return was disrespect. That night, while Kunle snored beside her, Simi drafted her final move. The next morning, she contacted her lawyer, and within 48 hours, documents were filed. A full audit of the company account, proof of misappropriated funds, forged signatures, and backdoor deals tied to Tolani George were presented to the board. Simi had built the company quietly behind the scenes, but she had ensured every legal move protected her. She held 60% of the shares, her name etched into every original document, sealed with her father's powerful legal connections. A board meeting was called. Kunle arrived, unaware, puffed up in pride with Tolani by his side. But when he entered the room and saw Simi standing at the head of the table, surrounded by lawyers, board members, and even press representatives, his confidence shattered. "Simi, what is this?" he barked. She didn't look at him. Instead, she turned to the board. "I called this meeting as the majority shareholder and founding investor of this company. I have evidence of misappropriation of funds, fraud, and inappropriate staff relationship by the current CEO." Gasps filled the room as Tolani turned pale. Kunle staggered back. "You can't do this. This is my company." "No," Simi said, finally turning to him, her voice calm and final. "This is our company, but you forgot that. You betrayed the one person who gave up her world to build yours." A unanimous vote was passed. Kunle was removed as CEO. His company cards were deactivated, access revoked, accounts frozen. By the time he got home that evening, security had been instructed not to let him into the estate. He banged on the gates, humiliated, sweating in the sun, but no one opened the gates for him. Kunle immediately flagged the taxi and drove straight to Tolani's house. She was not home, but he had a spare key that he always used to access the house. Kunle moved into her house without her permission. After all, he was the one who paid for the house and saw no reason why he would seek her permission to move in. Later that evening, Tolani returned home to find Kunle sitting in her living room chair. His boxes were stacked below the stairs, and Tolani could not hold back her anger. What are you doing here? She asked Kunle, who found her question insulting. I'm here to stay till everything is resolved, he said to Tolani, who tried so hard to hide her displeasure. Tolani folded her arms, her expression tight. You didn't even think to call me before moving into my house? Kunle scoffed. My house? Tolani, I paid for it, remember? Tolani laughed, but it wasn't the sweet, seductive laugh that she used to lure him in. It was dry and sharp. Paid for it? With what? Simi's money? Kunle's jaw tightened. Don't start, Tolani. I've had a rough day. Well, get used to it, she snapped, tossing her hand back on the couch, because things are about to get rougher. Since your wife decided to sack me too from the company. At first, Tolani tried to tolerate him, but it didn't take long before her true colors began to show. Within a week, Kunle was reduced to a glorified houseboy. You're just lying around all day, she spat one morning, hands on her hips. The least you can do is wash the bathroom and mop the floor. Or is that too much for a man without a job? You glorified houseboy. Kunle blinked, stunned. What did you just say? You heard me, she hissed, waving a mop in his face. You're eating my food, sleeping under my roof, using my electricity, and you decide not to be useful? Clean my house, you idiot. When he refused, she threw his clothes out into the corridor. You think I'm Simi, right? That I'll kneel and beg you? You idiot! You're lucky I haven't changed the locks to my door. From that day on, Tolani treated Kunle like a burden. She stopped cooking, stopped speaking to him unless it was to back instructions, and when she had guests over, she introduced him as her houseboy. One night, when he complained about the way she was treating him, she laughed in his face. You think you're still a big man? No one respects a fallen king, Kunle. Wake up and smell the coffee. Kunle had nowhere else to go. Everyone he once helped had vanished. His family refused to take him in. The few friends he had left had quietly blocked his number. One night, as Tolani prepared to go out, dressed in a mini dress, Kunle asked, Are you seriously going out dressed like that? She gave him a long, smug look. Yes, because unlike you, I still have value. Where are you even getting money from? He asked, and she laughed coldly. Oh, please, Kunle. Did you think I was sitting around waiting for you to bounce back? I have my own sponsors now, and unlike you, they deliver. That was the final blow. Kunle, once the boss of a multi-million naira company, reduced to a man, washing dishes and scrubbing floors, just to avoid being thrown into the streets by the same woman he once lavished millions on. Kunle remembered his early years with his wife Simi, how he lost his job, and how Simi took on the role of the breadwinner. Simi never complained or did anything to make Kunle feel less of himself. Rather, she encouraged him and built him into the man that he became. Kunle could not help but cry. He regretted all the horrible things that he did to his wife Simi and decided to make things right. Kunle did not know how to make things right with her. He sat in the living room, lost in his own thoughts, when Tolani walked in with another man. She ignored him completely and escorted the strange man to her bedroom. Kunle sat there broken as his imaginations ran wild. Unable to withstand the humiliation, Kunle walked out of the house in pain. He wandered the streets with no destination in mind. Each step he took felt heavier than the last. Everything he had ever known, power, money, respect, love, was gone. Simi had once been his everything, his rock, his hope, the woman who chose him over her own blood, and he, being so foolish, had thrown her away for glitter that held no gold. By dawn, Kunle found himself standing in front of Simi's house. He hesitated, staring at the tall black gates, like a man who was at the edge of a cliff. Part of him wanted to turn back and vanish, but Kunle perceived the smell of smoke. It was so unusual, so he began to ring the bell, but no one responded. The smell of smoke was now so pronounced, and Kunle could not help but scale the wall of the fence. He jumped into the house and made his way into the building, which was now covered in smoke. The house was on fire, and Simi was nowhere to be found. Kunle screamed out her name repeatedly when he heard a faint cry coming from the kitchen. He rushed towards the sound and found Simi slumped on the floor gasping for breath. Kunle's heart dropped. Simi, he shouted as he dashed towards her. She was barely conscious and her breaths were shallow. Kunle pulled her into his arms as he dashed out of the house. With every ounce of strength, Kunle carried Simi out of the kitchen, down the smoke-filled hallway, and out through the back door, coughing violently as the heat beat at his skin. The moment they were outside, neighbors rushed to help, and Simi was rushed to the hospital. Kunle ignored the burns that he sustained, focusing his attention on ensuring that his wife Simi was fine. At the hospital, Kunle paced the corridor, his hands blackened with soot, the sleeves of his shirt torn and soaked in sweat. The doctors worked tirelessly to save Simi, and every second felt like a lifetime to him. Moments later, a nurse came out to reveal that Simi was now stable. She inhaled a lot of smoke, but you got her here on time to save her life and that of the baby. Kunle opened his mouth in shock as he tried to digest what he was hearing. She's pregnant? He asked the nurse, who nodded in agreement. Only a few months along. You're lucky. A few more minutes and we would have lost them both. Kunle closed his eyes, unable to breathe. The weight of everything he had done, the betrayal, the neglect, the arrogance, came crashing down on him like a ton of bricks. Just then, the hospital doors burst open and Simi's father walked into the hospital. Where's my daughter? He barked as he walked towards Kunle, who stepped forward weakly to reveal that she was fine. She's resting, sir. She was caught up in a fire, he said to Simi's father, whose gaze landed on him sharp and unreadable. But instead of punching him, which Kunle fully expected, he gave a slow knowing nod. I heard what happened, he said coldly. I heard everything, Kunle. The company, the affair, the betrayal. But I also heard that you saved her life tonight. Kunle stood there, completely humble, as he apologized to Simi's father for all that he did to his daughter. Simi's father stared at him for a moment and began to speak. For years, I was angry at my daughter for choosing you, for giving up everything we offered her. Chief Adelaja paused. Then, he asked Kunle a question that he never saw coming. Do you know why I never interfered, even when I saw how things were going? Kunle shook his head as he waited patiently to hear the answer. Because I knew that the same strength that my daughter used to choose you was the same strength she would use to rebuild herself when you failed her. And truly, she did not disappoint me. Do you know the life she had to give up just to be with you? He asked Kunle, who broke down in tears and promised never to let them down again. Simi's father then placed a hand on Kunle's shoulder to thank him for saving his daughter's life. Tonight, you reminded me that even a broken man can still have a soul. You saved her, and we are so grateful to you, he said as Kunle nodded in gratitude. A nurse soon guided them into Simi's ward. Her face lit up the moment she opened her eyes and saw her husband Kunle standing next to her father. The two men who she loved with all of her heart were both standing in the same room. This had not happened in almost 20 years, and Simi smiled through her tears as they approached her bedside. She was weak, her voice barely above a whisper, but the warmth in her eyes was undeniable. You both came, she said softly as Kunle held her hand gently and began to speak. I almost lost you, Simi, and I would not have forgiven myself if anything happened to you. Her father, Chief Adelaja, stepped closer, clearing his throat. My daughter, I was wrong too. I let my pride come between us for far too long. But today, I saw the man you saw all those years ago. You chose with your heart, and even though he fell, tonight he rose again. Tears rolled down Simi's cheeks as her father reached out to her and held her hand. I'm proud of you, my daughter. You fought, you built, and you never gave up. Kunle stood by her bedside and apologized for all that he did, promising never to let her down again. I'll be the best husband and father that I can ever be, he said to Simi, who looked at him for a long moment. Her heart, though bruised, still remembered the man she once loved, the man who held her hand when they had nothing. That same man had risked his life just to save hers. I'm not the same woman I used to be, Kunle, she said. I've changed. I've grown. But maybe we can get to know each other again. Kunle nodded, overwhelmed with emotion. I'll walk as slow as you need, my darling. I'll wait forever if I have to. Chief Adelaja let out a hearty laughter. The first in years. It looks like this little baby has already started fixing what we adults couldn't, he said, smiling warmly. The room erupted in a soft laughter, the kind that comes with healing, love, and reconciliation. That was how Kunle learned his bitter lesson, never to underrate his wife. And from that day forward, Simi chose healing over hatred. She reinstated her husband back into the company, and her husband never took her grace for granted again. The lesson to be learned from these stories is that we should never take loyalty for granted. Those who love you in your lowest moments are the ones who deserve to share in your highest. Never forget the sacrifices of others because power and success means nothing if they cost you the people who once believed in you when you had nothing. When someone gives you their heart, their loyalty, and their life, protect it. Don't gamble it for moments of ego because betrayal may bring temporary satisfaction, but it always comes with consequences. I hope you enjoyed the story.